People usually call this woman Yumi. She is the owner of a flower shop in Japan.
だから毎回言ってるでしょ。基本的なことができてないからあなたは営業成績が悪いのよ。いい？今回の商品が目標売上いかなかったらあなたは減給の処置を取らせてもらうからね。
She is always strict with herself and her subordinates.
だからそういう言い訳はいらないから結果で見せてよね。わかった？
Since the company was founded, this woman has worked her way up to become the first female manager. Yumi started her flower shop with nothing but a few vases, a passion for floristry, and an unshakable belief in doing things the right way. From the start, Yumi was determined not just to run a business, but to lead, not in the traditional sense of command and control, but by setting an example. But being a perfectionist came with its own challenges. Her expectations were high, not just for herself, but for her team. She had a deep sense of responsibility for everything that happened in the shop. And sometimes, that responsibility makes her seem distant, even cold. People often misunderstood her seriousness for a lack of warmth. They didn't see the pressure she carried to make everything perfect. Still, Yumi didn't let those perceptions define her. She believed that if she just kept doing her best, stayed focused, remained consistent, eventually, others would see that everything she did came from a place of care. Her team respected her, even if they didn't always feel close to her. She had become, in many ways, a pioneer in her field. But like all journeys, hers wasn't without its lessons. And it was one customer, one moment, that would show Yumi a side of leadership she hadn't fully understood before. Not the kind that comes from setting standards or achieving results, but the kind that comes from humility, empathy, and learning to listen, even when you think you already know the answer. One morning, a message arrived at the flower shop. It was from a long-time corporate client, a company that often ordered floral arrangements for events and business partners. The flowers, they said, lacked the freshness and attention to detail they had come to associate with Yumi's brand. It was the kind of feedback no business owner enjoys receiving. But she didn't take it as an attack. She saw it as something else, an opportunity to understand, to improve, and to make things right. Without delay, she called in her store manager and calmly explained the situation.
何か問題？
滝本先生、わかる？
詳しくはわからない。
あなたのそういうところがダメなのよ。いい？滝本先生は有名な華道家で自身で個展を開いたり、その他に雑誌でのコラム多数掲載、テレビレギュラーも5本持ってる超有名な華道家よ。
そうなのか。
そんな影響力のある先生がテレビとかでうちの会社の批判したら、たちまちうちの信用はガタ落ちになってしまうわ。
Rather than becoming defensive or assigning blame, she asked the manager to personally meet with the client, not to explain or justify, but simply to listen and offer a sincere apology on behalf of the shop. The manager immediately went to see the customer.
この度は申し訳ございませんでした。
見たまえ。これなんて花びらが取れてるじゃないか。折れてるし。一体どうなってるんだ。 謝るだけだったら誰でもできるんだよ。それにね、私のような大物の謝罪になぜ君のような下っ端が来る？誠意が感じられないよ。
申し訳ありません。
君じゃ話にならないな。明日もっと偉いやつに謝罪に来させよう。
It was a thoughtful gesture, one that reflected Yumi's values. But unfortunately, it didn't have the results she'd hoped for. The client, though polite, made it clear. They appreciated the manager's visit, but wanted to speak directly with Yumi. When the manager returned and relayed the request, Yumi didn't hesitate. Despite her already packed schedule, she arranged a meeting for the very next day.
先生の件どうなった？報告して。
お前のような下っ端じゃ話にならないからって、もっと偉いやつを連れてこいってそう言われて。
そうなのね。分かった。明日私が行ってくる。
She respected this client, not just for their business, but for their honesty. And she believed that leadership meant showing up, especially when things didn't go as planned.
風間？昨日来たのも風間だったの？
はい、そうなんです。昨日伺ったのは私の主人なんです。
それでどうするんだ？
この度は申し訳ございませんでした。
こんな花を私に使わせるつもりだったのか？
そんなことは。
君は花を甘く見てるのか？私が花にどれだけこだわりを持ってるのか知っているだろう。
はい、もちろんです。
それにしては謝り方に誠意が見られないんだよ。
はい、それは申し訳ございませんでした。
全然誠意が感じられないよ。君は分かってると思うけど、私がテレビや雑誌で君の会社を酷評したらどうなるか分かるよな。
はい、もちろんです。
But the meeting didn't go quite as expected.
君の態度次第ではあらゆる媒体で君の会社の酷評をしてもいいんだぞ。それでもいいのか？
Yumi showed up on time with a calm and composed demeanor. She listened, she responded, and she offered an apology.
君のこれからの対応に会社の名誉がかかってるんだ。
But something was missing, not in her words, but in her presence. Until one afternoon, nearly a month later, a familiar name appeared again, the same client. Another message, another note of concern. This time, it wasn't just about the flowers. It was about the feeling that the care and personal touch they once felt from the shop was beginning to fade. She wasn't upset, she wasn't discouraged, but she knew, deep down, that something had to change, not just in how she responded to problems, but in how she connected with the people behind them. Leadership, she realized, wasn't just about actions. It was about presence, about heart, about humility. And this time, she would show up differently. She remembered why she had started the flower shop in the first place, not just to create beautiful arrangements, but to bring a moment of peace into someone's day. That was the heart of her work. And in that moment of stillness, Yumi made a quiet decision. She would reach out again, not out of obligation, but from a genuine desire to reconnect, to rebuild, and to truly listen this time. She acknowledged how the past meeting may have felt rushed, and how that wasn't reflective of the care she truly felt, both for her work and the people who believed in it. Then she picked up the phone and asked to meet again. This time, not to explain, but to understand. When they met a few days later, she bowed gently and smiled. And this time, it was a real smile, not one formed out of habit, but out of presence. The meeting was simple. She listened deeply, not just to the client's words, but to what was underneath them. And ultimately, the desire to continue a relationship that had once felt meaningful. The client wasn't looking for someone to be perfect. They were looking for someone to care. And in that moment, they saw it. Yumi spoke honestly about how busy things had gotten and how truly grateful she was for the feedback, because it reminded her that the real success of a business isn't just about what it delivers, it's about how it makes people feel. And when the meeting ended, something had shifted, not just in the relationship between client and business owner, but in Yumi herself. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was carrying the weight of perfection on her shoulders. She felt lighter, clearer, more grounded in what really mattered. The client, too, left with a smile, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because they felt seen, heard, respected. Yumi had discovered something powerful. Leadership isn't just about doing, it's about being. Being sincere, being humble, being willing to grow. And growth, as she now knew, isn't measured only in success, but in how we respond when we've fallen short. The experience with the client hadn't just taught her something about leadership. It reminded her that even in a business as delicate and detailed as floristry, it's the people who carry the true meaning of the work. So Yumi did something she hadn't done in a long time. She called for a team meeting, not to discuss numbers or logistics, but to reflect, to listen, and to grow together. She shared the story of the client, not to criticize, not to assign blame, but to explain how even with the best of intentions, things can go off course, especially when we stop truly listening. She admitted where she had fallen short. What emerged wasn't a list of problems. It was a collection of ideas rooted in care. From improving customer communication to creating more space for team feedback, every voice carried value. Together, they drafted new commitments. Customers began to notice. As weeks turned into months, Yumi's flower shop blossomed, not just in revenue or reputation, but in spirit. And for Yumi, it wasn't about proving anything anymore. She had already become a leader. Because at the heart of her journey was a simple truth. We all make mistakes. We all miss the mark sometimes. But what defines us isn't perfection. It's how we respond when we're given the chance to do better. And often, doing better doesn't begin with a big gesture. It begins with a single moment of honesty, a sincere apology, and the courage to grow from it.
ユミ、会社先に行ってるね。
いってらっしゃい。
あ